Electric cars don't have to be big family cruisers, they can also be small and fun, and one of the best examples of that is this, the Fiat 500e. This is Four Wheels and a Seat. My name is Alex Dalrymple and you found your way to my channel where I review new cars every week. For people who might need a new car but don't know which way to turn, I can help you out with an easy to understand, jargon-free review. But to not miss an episode, you need to hit the subscribe button down below, the notification bell, and if you enjoy the video, please do give me a like. So I'm a tall guy and rose gold is definitely not my color. So this car really probably isn't aimed at me, but I do have to say, beyond that, it is actually really good. And on the outside, it looks just like a regular Fiat 500, except of course here at the front where I really like what they've done with the 500 badge here. There's no grille up on top, it's blanked off. We do have a Dyson hairdryer style grill down the bottom there to allow the battery to breathe. These light clusters are interesting. They look a little bit like they've had some sort of, the eyebrows sitting on top of the eyes here for the driving lights, and they swoop down underneath. We've got more driving lights down there. The indicator sticks out here on the side, which is an interesting little touch. I think actually the best design feature of this car is the wheels. They're 17-inch alloys in two-tone, and it's a really nice design. 17 inches doesn't sound very big, but because this is such a small car, they look bigger than they are, maybe. Classic Fiat 500 shape here with this chrome strip here in a straight line along is a very classic design feature. Up on top, a glass roof. Unfortunately, it doesn't open, but it does keep the cabin nice and bright. At the back, real classic Fiat 500 look. Spoiler up on top with a windshield. And these rear light clusters, they look a little bit Mini-esque maybe, but I like the design, it's good. Under the big tailgate here, we've actually got a fairly good storage space. Fiat don't actually quote the amount of room here with the seats up, but put them down, you get 550 litres of storage space, which is actually a bit larger than a Mazda 6. So if you've only got two people in this car, you can carry a fair amount of stuff. We've also got the charging cable in the back here as well. Also here at the back, we've got the 500 badge that has been stylized with an E there to remind you that this is an electric car, and blue outline there because that is the color of electricity. The 500e comes in one spec only, and it's La Prima. Under the little bonnet here, we've got a single electric motor that sends its power to the front wheels only and outputs 87 kilowatts and 220 newton meters of torque, which is a fair amount for a car that is pretty small. A full charge will get you 311 kilometers of range, and charging to 80% at a high-speed charger takes about 35 minutes. Inside, and it's really light and bright and looks a bit luxe, and the thing that most people seem to notice first are the leather seats, which are actually made of eco leather, and they have the words Fiat stitched onto them. They do feel quite premium. There is a bit of hard plastic in here though, and some interesting sort of firmish material up here on top of the dashboard, but overall it's a really light and bright and quite nice cabin to be in. The center console screen is 10.25 inches. I don't love the native software on it. It had a bit of an issue pairing with my phone the other day, and it wouldn't actually do it at all on my first journey, but it did on the second journey. And it has wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, although it does seem to drop out from time to time. There's digital radio and native navigation as well. Moving down beneath that, a row of shortcut buttons here for the climate control. Most of the climate control can be operated through the center console screen as well. Wireless phone charging here on a separate little pad, a USB-A port. There's no gear shifter in this car. It is all push button with PRND along here, pretty self-explanatory. Then we've got this big open space here with a cup holder that folds out. When I first got into this car, I thought it only had one cup holder here in the center, but no, there's actually a second one here that flips down. This little sort of floating console here has your drive mode controls plus volume control for the sound system, which has 6 speakers incidentally and is not terribly good. Another cup holder down here, which is very deep, almost touching the floor. USB-A and USB-C port here, plus a 12-volt charger. A tiny little center console bin, which you could also use as a cup holder. I've actually tried that and it works okay. And a little roller door style thing to cover up the center console area. The digital instrument cluster is, like a lot of things in this car, small at 7 inches, but it's pretty good. You can actually display a few different display modes on there, including the maps, and you can also get visualizations of how power is moving from the battery to the wheels and vice versa. The steering wheel has a classic Fiat 500 look. It feels really good in the hand. It's wrapped in this eco leather, some piano black buttons here to control the sound system, and the adaptive cruise control. There's also height and reach adjustment. The seating position in this car is not great for me. And look, admittedly, like I said before, I'm 190 centimeters tall. I'm not really designed for this car, so I am sitting a little further back than I normally would, mainly because my knee won't fit here because of the way that this part of the dashboard sticks out. So the seating position isn't great for me, but if you're shorter, you'll be just fine. Also, headroom, I think I only really fit in this car because it has a sunroof. If this was a solid roof, I think I'd actually struggle. Bit of a blind spot here with the rear vision mirror as well, blocking out a lot of my vision of what's going on there. Wing mirrors are a good size though, and there are blind spot monitors in those. The doors do have a fair amount of hard plastic on them, but we do get more of this eco leather here on the armrests, window controls, and rear vision mirror controls. There's also 2 ways to open these doors. They can either be opened electrically with this push button, or there is a manual release down below. And a little Easter egg here for the serious Fiat 500 fans. Here in the door handle is a little sign and illustration saying "Made in Torino" and a picture of the original Fiat 500. Oh, you have to love the turning circle in this car. It is so small. So yeah, being a city car, an absolute breeze to drive around the city. It has plenty of go. It's very zippy, and I hate using that term, but it seems appropriate here. And an absolute breeze to park. I mean, ridiculously easy to park. And I have to say, really, a lot of fun to drive. It has more go in it than I thought it would, and it gets along really, really well. But you can't help but feel just a little bit like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible when he's driving, I think it's an electric one of these, through the back streets of Rome, I think it was, in one of the Mission Impossible films. And it is actually almost believable that this car would perform as well as that. I'm sure the one he had was a little bit tricked up. Is the Fiat 500e a turn-back car, a car so good looking that you have to turn back and look at it after you've parked it? Yeah, you know, I think it is. It's actually really quite eye-catching. It's not in my favourite colour, being rose gold. I would prefer black, but it's a good design, and it's that old thing of, you know, you don't really notice how many of these there are on the road until you're actually driving one, and then you see them everywhere. So there are a few different driving modes, and they are controlled by the E mode switch down here on the center console. At the moment I have it in Sherpa, which allows for regenerative braking. So when I take my foot off the pedal, the engine brakes and actually brings the car to a stop. And regular viewers of this channel will know that I'm a big fan of one-pedal driving. I think it is the way of the future, and with very little practice, you can get very good at driving without ever having to touch the brake. The other drive modes are range, which kind of dulls everything down a little bit to maximize the available range of the battery, and normal, which is pretty self-explanatory, and you will need to use the brake pedal to stop the car. Back into Sherpa for me, I think. Fiat claims 311 kilometers on a full charge from this battery in this car, and I think that's a little bit generous. I think maybe 220 kilometers might be a little bit more accurate, because I've noticed that the available charge from the battery has dropped precipitously over the week I've had this car, and I certainly haven't done anywhere near that. Driving a microcar, you do really get a sense of just how small you are on the road, and just things like people not letting you in or not noticing you in their blind spot until the very last moment. It can be a little bit of a harrowing experience, especially when you're driving right next to a very large truck. But the advantage of having so much torque instantaneously available means that you can get out of the way pretty quickly. The ride from the suspension is probably a little bit on the firmer side, but that does allow for some really good handling going around corners. This car just barely needs to slow down at all to go around a corner and stay pretty flat. It is a lot of fun to drive on twisty roads. It's also not the quietest car to drive. There is a fair amount of road noise. Very little noise from the electric motor, I mean virtually none. I think there's a little bit of artificial noise maybe added in when you're accelerating and decelerating to a stop. But the amount of road noise coming through the cabin is, I don't want to say excessive, but it's there. The other advantage of driving such a small car, of course, is excellent visibility all round. It really is very easy to check your blind spot just because the car's so small. You don't have to turn your head very far to see it. Blind spot monitors in the rear vision mirrors make it easier as well. Oh! I hate forward collision alert warnings. Yeah, that felt unnecessary, and it actually... There was really nothing much going on in front of me, and it just came on, and I feel awake now. Hey, it's early morning. I'm good, I'm awake. I haven't had coffee yet. See, look at this. This is not a large parking spot at all, but just cruising in here. So easy. The push button gear shifting does take a little bit of getting used to, but it's not too bad. The Fiat 500e takes a little bit of getting used to, but I mean, that could just be me. It's a fantastic car to run around town in. It's really not designed for touring. But at $58,000, it's not exactly a cheap runabout. I mean, for that kind of cash, you could get a much larger Tesla Model 3 and still have money left over for a wall charger. But for Fiat fans, it's certainly worth the price of admission.